if you are wanting to put an asset forward. And very importantly, as Rachel said, in the legislation, how they define an asset of community value is that it's social well-being and or of social interest, be that cultural, recreational or sporting. So obviously that's what you need to emphasize in your application that you actually put in. So the first one is you have to be really clear that the nominated asset has been used in the recent past. Recent is what the legislation says. And the City Council, we tend to use that around 5 years, is that it has to have been used. But if it hasn't been used within 5 years, you need to explain why that is. Doesn't automatically exclude it, but you do need to do that. You also need to be really clear how you feel the nominated asset will be used in the next 5 years. So the future usage of it is also really important, and you need to emphasize that in your submission and relate it to the purpose that the asset was first developed for. Be really clear about the community use and stack that up and go. If you've got an asset, you want to put an asset forward, I don't know, perhaps it's a community centre, go and talk to people who run that and all the activities that are in it. So you build a really good picture of what actually goes on there and how that benefits the local community. One of the things we said right at the beginning as well is that you have to have a local connection to that asset. So you need to demonstrate why you've got that local connection. Do some research and have a look. Definitely have a look at the ACV register. It's freely available to view. You've got the link, just to see what sort of things have been on there before. As I say, if you're nominating community centre, try and go and speak to the people who run it or read up on it. The other really useful information that wasn't there last year is that the city have now got something that's called the City Observatory. It's very, very fancy word for saying it's where all the data's kept in one place. So if you follow the link that you'll get on the slides when you receive them, when you go on, it shows ward by ward. You can do it ward by ward, what the assets are in a local area, what the demography of the area is, who lives there, the age profile, etc. So you may find data on there that will add weight to your submission of whatever building you're putting forward. Treat the application pretty much as you would a job application. Don't assume that the officer panel knows something or anything about that asset that you're nominating. Write down and tell us everything that you want us to know about the historic use, the current use, and the proposed for the future. So really give it a very full on. If you're still unsure, seek guidance. Speak to us at NDSU, and we can talk through the process for you and guide you. What we can't do is write your nomination. We are able to do that because Rachel, who has the lead within the team to coordinate, does not have a decision-making role on the panel, and neither do I. So we deliberately kept it so we're able to give that guidance and advice. We're not crossing over our responsibilities for that. So those are the main bits that we wanted to cover on ACVs. I know there will be lots of other questions, but I just wanted to go through those. And if people want to ask any questions before we go on to community asset transfer.
Can I ask a question?
Go for it.
Obviously, I think, Karen, you referenced the relevance of this process, or the perceived relevance of this process, in light of where Birmingham is with the Section 114. Is there for context? Is there a push to get more things and more assets on the register at this stage, and recognition of community assets in terms of the wider map of what's in Birmingham that is providing outcomes against, the core plan or other things that the Birmingham wants to get as much of a register as it can, and then obviously on to your second stage of asset transfer, similarly is the context to get as many things as it can transferred to community groups, so that the outcomes of that stay within community rather than a commercial venture. It's just especially the timing is very pertinent in terms of the perception and the assumption about where Birmingham is with infrastructure and facilities. So it was just that kind of question, really.
Yeah. Can I come in just to say that we tend to do the workshops about once a year. So I think, like Joe said when we started, it's been about a year since the last one. So that was why the timing is now. Mm-hmm. And as Karen said at the beginning, the ACVs don't just relate to buildings that are owned by Birmingham City Council. It could be any buildings at all. So, yeah, Karen.
So what we're doing is people don't realise that there is a community right that you could have done. People could do that. It's 5 years ago, 4 years ago, 3 years ago, last year. I understand it might have extra pertinence now and relevance now, that people might feel there is an additional need to list assets, but it's always been a right for you to be able to do that. And what we're doing is sharing the information out and making people aware that there is this particular process. So we're information sharing. It's not. It is a community right. We can't do listings. It has to come from the community. So we're just sharing that information out for you. It's just the timing this year seems perhaps a bit more pertinent to people. We'll answer your asset transfer one when we just cover that bit as well, Dean.
Okay, thank you.
If an asset it does expire after 5 years, do you need to resubmit? Yes, yeah. You do. And we do keep an eye on when things are due to expire and do remind organisations that it is expired, they're expiring and they may want to put in again.
So should we just, before we move on to the other community ownership fund and community asset transfer, somebody asked about why applications fail.
So I think the hints and tips, if those aren't followed, they're one of the reasons why it wouldn't be successful. But yeah, Rachel, if you want to give a bit more detail, that'd be fantastic.
Yes, so I think it is all about following Karen's advice and just approaching it like a job application, or when you're applying for a grant, and making sure that all of the criteria is followed, and the actual legislation, the pertinent parts of the legislation are actually written on the application form at the end. So have a look at that and make sure that you are fulfilling the areas regarding recent or current use and future use. So, and include all the evidence that you can. If I've actually just had a handwritten one, which was the boxes aren't very big, so I've sent out another version because I think it's good if you can type it and just, I think the more relevant information, the better, really. So that, because those are the things that the officer panel are considering. Is that current use, and is it realistic? Because I think I read out the current use bit, but let me read out the future use. So it is realistic to think that there can continue to be non-ancillary use of the building or the other land, which will further the social well-being or social interests of the local community. So Simbi said, how much of a barrier is it if the space has not been used for over 20 years? Yeah, that is a barrier. In
fact, Rachel and I were talking about this yesterday, about a different book. It's a derelict building on a bit of open space. If you put them both in and the open space is used, then you can sort of include it all. But it is there does need to have been past, current, and potential for future use.
Yeah. So say, I mean, I don't know, Simbi, the place that you're talking about, but say you that there had been no public use of the building for 20 years, and it did have open space that was used to further social well-being of the community, then you would need to provide evidence of that, and so that could be, sort of speaking to some people, getting some comments, getting a volunteer to sort of note how many people use it within a certain time. All of that would be evidence that you could use to show that maybe the building isn't used, but the surrounding open space is used.
Is it okay if I just speak to the place? This particular piece of land, I can't go back far enough, but I think it used to belong to the city council. The city council sold it to a housing development. The housing development was completed, and then there's an element of the land that had to be maintained for community use. So since the housing development, the house had been built and sold, and there's some social housing there. The piece of land that is fenced off for community use is still fenced off. Part of the planning, so I'm assuming it's the bit of money that's in the pot to put a building or to put, so there's like a changing room block being put on there. So there's an understanding, I think, from the housing developers that it's called a playing field. But it's locked, and it's never been used as a playing field. The building's new, the building's never been used, and it's been locked for over 20 years.
Oh my goodness.
So it's in the heart of the community. There's not just, I mean, I'm represent one organisation, but I know there's a conversation between 4 or 5 kind of local organisations to the site, including local schools, because as a playing field, it would be great. And I think there's the city council, the local officers are aware of it. I'm just not sure what the kind of sticking point is. So that's why I was thinking, is that a barrier? Because we'd be happy to lead on.
So if you put in a submission, you'd have to include that narrative.
Yeah. Okay.
There as well. I mean, recent past is quite subjective, isn't it? I mean, we say 5 years, but if you put a really strong case, I don't know, heritage buildings are much older than that, but you'd have to spell it out in the submission that you actually put in. There are a few exclusions to what's seen as bad assets. So residential assets are excluded. So residential properties and residential caravan sites are excluded.
And utilities.
So we had one in for around one of the reservoirs, but that's because it's owned by the water company. That also can't actually be listed as part of the legislation.
I mean, I'd be happy to talk to you separately, Simbi, but I would think that because it doesn't fulfil the current or recent past, that would be problematic in taking it forward. But we could sort of talk separately.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I will be in touch. Thanks, Rachel and
Thanks.
Karen.
And Dean has asked, is anyone from the community on the assessment panel for local context and insight? What we do, Dean, is we actually, the councillor within the relevant ward, we forward it on to them for comment before it goes to the officer panel.
And Rachel presents to the panel. So that's where that context would be put.
Biodiversity is its strength, but it is not hugely used by people owing to accessibility. Is this enough to argue it's an asset? I don't think it is, unfortunately. Yeah, I get that it is its value for nature a strong argument. Within the current legislation, no, because, you know, social well-being does not include, you know, the benefits to nature. Would it be counted if there's group tending to it? Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, that's the bit you've got to build around. You know, you've got to build the story of why is it important to the communities, because you do good stuff on that. You know, it generates good stuff in the area. Absolutely, it is about the narrative that can be provided.